The crystal shattered against marble with a sound like breaking stars, and every head in the Montclair gallery turned toward Marin Calloway. Time suspended. Champagne pooled at her feet, soaking through her worn leather boots. Around her, silk gowns rustled with scandalized whispers. She had not meant to drop the tray. She had not meant to be here at all. 30 minutes earlier, her brother Corvin had begged her to take his place, serving at the Montclair Auction House's annual exhibition. He owed Hadley Finch another favor, another debt from another scheme gone wrong. Marin had agreed, because she always agreed, because Corvin's debts kept their mother fed and their father's medical treatments paid for. Now she stood frozen, surrounded by people who wore her family's entire yearly income around their wrists. Move, she commanded herself. Apologize. Disappear. But before she could kneel to collect the shards, a voice cut through the crowd. Good heavens, where did they find this creature? The workhouse? Lady Sabine Langford emerged like a blade wrapped in rose-colored silk. Her smile was beautiful and utterly vicious. Someone fetch a mop, and perhaps a collar for whatever street animal wandered in. Laughter rippled through the gallery. Marin's face burned. Her hands trembled as she knelt, reaching for the broken crystal. Careful, Lady Sabine drawled. We would not want you bleeding on the Aubusson. It is worth more than your life. Marin's fingers closed around a shard of crystal. She breathed, counted to 5. For Corvin, for Mother, for Father's medicine. I apologize for the disruption. I will clean this immediately. See that you do. Lady Sabine turned away, already dismissing her. But someone had not turned away. Through the crowd, Marin felt the weight of a gaze that made her skin prickle. She looked up. He stood near the east wall, before a massive battle painting. Tall, dark-haired, dressed in evening clothes that fit with the precision of a second skin. His face was all sharp angles and controlled stillness. He was watching her. Not with mockery. With something that looked almost like recognition. Their eyes met across the gallery, and Marin felt something shift in her chest. Then a servant appeared with a mop, blocking her view. Up, girl. The servant tugged at her elbow. Let me handle this. You go stand by the service corridor. Marin retreated, pressing herself against the wall, trying to slow her racing heart. The auctioneer, a pompous man named Weatherton, ascended the small stage. Behind him hung the evening's crown jewel, a painting rumored to be a lost Vermeer, authenticated by the renowned expert, Cornelius Blackthorne. Ladies and gentlemen, we present Vermeer's long-lost masterpiece, The Lady with the Pearl Veil. Bidding shall commence at £50,000. Marin found herself drawn forward. Art had always been her secret passion, cultivated in libraries and print shops. She knew Vermeer, knew his brushwork, his light, his obsessive attention to texture. And as she studied the painting, certainty settled in her stomach. Something was wrong. The light fell incorrectly. The pearl's luminescence was flat rather than dimensional, and the signature spacing was wrong by millimeters. This was not a Vermeer. This was a forgery. Marin pressed her lips together. It was not her place to speak. And yet, £50,000. Someone was about to spend a fortune on a lie. Shall we begin? Weatherton smiled. Do I hear 50,000? The bids climbed rapidly. 60,000. 70. 75,000, announced a deep voice, and Marin's heart stopped. It was him, the man who had watched her. 80,000, countered someone else. 90, said the dark-haired stranger. Do not speak. Do not speak. £100,000, the stranger said, and the room fell silent. Sold, Weatherton declared, to His Grace, the Duke of Thornfield, for £100,000. His Grace. The Duke. The man who had watched her fall was a duke, and he was about to spend £100,000 on a forgery. Before she could stop herself, she heard her own voice cut through the applause. It is a forgery. Silence crashed through the gallery. Weatherton sputtered. I beg your pardon? The painting is not a Vermeer. It is a forgery. Lady Sabine's laughter shattered the silence. Now the street creature fancies herself an art expert. But the Duke had turned, those blue eyes fixed on Marin with an intensity that made breathing difficult. Wait. One word. Yet it stopped every movement in the room. He crossed toward her, the crowd parting before him. Up close, he was even more intimidating. You claim this is a forgery. On what grounds? Marin swallowed. The light distribution is inconsistent with Vermeer's technique. He painted from a single light source. This painting shows light from multiple angles. The pearl's luminescence is flat, and the signature spacing is incorrect by 3 millimeters. Cornelius Blackthorne pushed forward, his face purple. This is outrageous. I have authenticated hundreds of works. This serving girl presumes to challenge my expertise? The Duke ignored him. You studied authenticated Vermeers. Where? Libraries, museums, print reproductions. She lifted her chin. I educated myself. And you believe yourself qualified to challenge a renowned expert? I believe myself qualified to recognize when light falls wrong, when a signature has been copied rather than instinctively rendered. She met his eyes. You were about to spend £100,000 on a lie. The Duke studied her. Then he turned to Blackthorne, removed the painting from its frame. Your Grace, this is highly irregular. Remove the painting. Now. The Duke produced a small knife. He moved to the canvas and scraped away a thin layer of paint. Beneath the signature was another signature, clearly different. The Duke scraped further, revealing a second layer of paint. The Vermeer had been painted over an older work, the signature forged. Blackthorne's face went gray. It would appear, the Duke said quietly, that the serving girl knows more about art than the renowned expert. Chaos erupted, Blackthorne attempting to flee, guards intercepting him. Come with me, the Duke said to Marin. It was not a request. The private room was lined with books and leather chairs. The Duke closed the door behind them. What is your name? Marin Calloway. And why is Marin Calloway, who can identify forged Vermeers with a glance, serving champagne? Because my brother owed a debt. Your brother's debts. Plural, I assume. He tilted his head. You just humiliated one of society's most respected experts and made an enemy of Lady Sabine Langford. And yet you worry about protecting your brother's privacy. Family is family, Your Grace. I do not expect someone like you to understand. Someone like me? Wealthy, titled, untouchable. Then the Duke laughed. It was not warm, but it was genuine, and it transformed his face. You are either very brave or very foolish, Miss Calloway. Perhaps both. I find myself in need of someone with particular qualities, intelligence, observation, the ability to move through society without being noticed. His eyes met hers. You demonstrated all three tonight. What exactly are you proposing? In 3 weeks, my grandmother is hosting a house party at our country estate. The most powerful families in England will attend. Someone is stealing information from my family, secrets that could destroy reputations. Someone at that house party is the source. I need to discover who. You need an investigator. I need someone society will dismiss as unimportant while she moves among them. His smile was razor-thin. Attend the house party as a guest. In exchange for your observations, I will pay off your brother's debts entirely and provide letters of introduction for employment. Marin's breath caught. All of Corvin's debts? £4,000. I could settle it before breakfast tomorrow. £4,000. The number had haunted her family for years. Why would you offer so much? Because the secrets being stolen are worth infinitely more. Because your actions demonstrated integrity I rarely encounter. And because I am curious about you, Miss Calloway. I have conditions, 3 of them. First, my family receives a respectable explanation for my absence. Second, you provide the letters regardless of whether your investigation succeeds. Third, you tell me the truth about why this matters. The secrets concern my father, who died 6 months ago under circumstances never fully explained. His jaw tightened. I think someone is profiting from his death. For a moment, he was simply a man in pain. Marin understood that pain. You have yourself an arrangement, Your Grace. He extended his hand. She took it. There is one more thing, he said quietly. Tonight, you were wearing a locket. Gold, with a sapphire at its center. Where did you acquire it? Marin's free hand moved instinctively to her throat, where the locket still rested beneath her servant's uniform. It belonged to my mother. She gave it to me before things became difficult. She said it was a family heirloom. May I see it? She hesitated. The locket was the only valuable thing she owned, the only connection to whatever her family had been before poverty stripped everything else away. But he was waiting, and something in his expression suggested this wasn't idle curiosity. Slowly, she pulled the chain from beneath her collar, letting the locket rest in her palm. Gold gleamed in the lamplight, the sapphire winking like a captured star. The Duke's face went very still. Where did your family come from originally, Miss Calloway? I do not know. Marin's voice trembled slightly. My mother never spoke of it. She said the past was best left buried. And your father? He knows nothing. My mother had the locket when they married. She never explained its origin. The Duke stared at the sapphire for a long moment. Then he released her hand, stepping back with careful precision. The carriage will collect you tomorrow evening from your home. Pack whatever you need for a 3-week stay. My sister Cressida will provide appropriate wardrobe and guidance on society protocol. His voice had returned to its formal coldness, but something underneath had shifted. Do not mention the locket to anyone. Do you understand? Why? Because that design, that sapphire surrounded by gold filigree, I've seen it before. His eyes met hers, and she saw something there that might have been fear. In a portrait that hangs in the Royal Gallery, around the neck of Princess Eleonora of Valdoria, who disappeared without a trace 30 years ago. Marin's blood ran cold. Your Grace, I do not understand. Neither do I. Not yet. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. But I intend to find out. And something tells me, Miss Calloway, that when I do, neither of our lives will ever be the same. He opened the door and was gone, leaving Marin alone with the impossible weight of his words and the locket that suddenly burned like a brand against her skin. A princess, a disappearance, a family secret buried for 30 years. She touched the sapphire with trembling fingers and wondered what exactly she had just agreed to uncover. The Blackwood estate materialized through morning mist like a castle from a fever dream. 3 days had passed since the gallery. 3 days of frantic preparation and one terrible argument with Corvin. You cannot trust him, Corvin had insisted. Dukes do not simply offer freedom to serving girls. But Marin was caught by the promise of £4,000 erased, caught by the mystery of her mother's locket. Breathtaking, is it not? Lady Cressida Blackwood, the Duke's younger sister, had talked nearly without pause for the entire journey. Cressida was 20, dark-haired like her brother, but warm where he was reserved. "It is certainly impressive," Marin managed. "You are so wonderfully understated. I like you already." They entered through massive doors into an entrance hall that could have contained Marin's entire family home. Portraits of generations of Blackwood stared down with aristocratic disdain. "Miss Calloway." The Duke descended the grand staircase in riding clothes. "I trust your journey was comfortable. Your sister was an excellent companion." "She talked your ear off, you mean?" He turned to Cressida. "Has grandmother arrived?" "She arrived this morning, resting in her chambers." "Resting, or preparing her interrogation strategy?" "I am simply being honest, Theron. She is going to grill poor Marin." The Duke turned back to Marin. "You will meet my grandmother at dinner. Mrs. Hartley will show you to your rooms." A severe-looking housekeeper materialized. "If you will follow me, miss." The rooms assigned were larger than her family's entire flat. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall. "The house party begins in 3 days," Mrs. Hartley informed her. "Dinner is served at 8. The West Wing is closed for renovations. Staff only." "Thank you, Mrs. Hartley." Somewhere in this house lay secrets worth killing for, and somewhere in her family history lay a connection to vanished royalty. A knock at the door. Cressida swept in. "You are worrying. Stop it immediately." She settled into a chair. "Theron hired you because he trusts you, which is remarkable. He does not trust anyone since father died." "He mentioned your father's death." Cressida's expression dimmed. "Father was healthy. Then one evening he went to bed complaining of headaches, and by morning he was gone. The doctors called it apoplexy. But Theron found strange letters afterward. And then someone started selling information to our rivals. Someone in your household. Hence the house party. Every suspect will be present." Dinner arrived too quickly. The Dowager Duchess managed to look intimidating, despite being barely 5 feet tall. Lady Octavia Blackwood had silver hair and dark eyes that tracked Marin's entrance like a predator assessing prey. "So, this is the girl who called Blackthorn a fraud." Marin curtsied. "Your Grace? Come closer. I wish to inspect what my grandson has brought into my home." Lady Octavia's gaze swept over her. "Your dress is borrowed. Your shoes pain you. And yet you carry yourself with dignity. Interesting. I learned from my mother, Your Grace." "Where is your family from?" "London, though my mother rarely spoke of her origins." Lady Octavia studied her. "She has spine, more than I expected." "I have no intention of lingering, Your Grace. I am here for a specific purpose. When that purpose concludes, I will return to my life." "Will you?" Lady Octavia's smile was thin as a blade. "We shall see. Sit. The soup is getting cold." Dinner was an exercise in controlled tension. Lady Octavia continued her interrogation between courses, probing Marin's knowledge, her opinions, and her reactions to various provocations. Cressida attempted to lighten the mood with cheerful interjections. The Duke mostly watched, his expression revealing nothing. "Tell me about the locket," Lady Octavia said abruptly during the fish course. Marin's fork froze. "Theron mentioned you wear one. Gold, with a sapphire center. It belonged to my mother. I know nothing of its history. Show me." Slowly, Marin withdrew the chain. Lady Octavia leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she leaned back. "Where is your mother now?" "In London." "Why?" "I should like to meet her, before the house party begins." She swept from the room without another word. "What just happened?" Marin demanded. "My grandmother recognized something in your locket." The Duke stood. "I need to speak with her." "You promised me truth. If my family is connected to whatever is happening here, I deserve to know." "You do deserve to know. But some truths are better revealed slowly. The next morning, Lady Octavia had departed at dawn for London. The Duke retreated to his study. Marin found herself wandering the estate, studying portraits and trying to piece together the puzzle. "You look thoughtful." Marin spun. The Duke stood in the doorway to the library, his presence commanding as always, but somehow softer in the morning light. "I have much to think about, Your Grace." "Theron." He moved into the room, closer than propriety strictly allowed. "When we are alone, you may use my name. Titles become exhausting over time." "Is that appropriate?" "Very little about our arrangement is appropriate, Miss Calloway. Why start observing conventions now?" Despite everything, she found herself smiling. "A fair point. Theron." His name felt strange on her tongue, intimate in ways that made her pulse quicken. "My grandmother has gone to find your mother," he said, his voice gentling. "She believes Helena Calloway may hold answers to questions that have haunted my family for years. Questions about the vanished princess. Questions about everything." He moved to the window, staring out at the misty gardens. 30 years ago, Princess Eleonora of Valdoria was engaged to marry my uncle, Edmund Blackwood. The match would have united two powerful families, strengthened political alliances, and secured futures for generations. What happened? 1 week before the wedding, she vanished. No note, no warning, no explanation. She simply disappeared from her chambers at the Valdorian Palace and was never seen again. "And you believe my mother is somehow connected to this?" Theron turned to face her. "The locket you wear is identical to one Princess Eleonora wore in every portrait painted of her. The sapphire, the filigree pattern, even the chain length. Either it is an extraordinary coincidence, or my mother is Princess Eleonora." The words hung between them, impossible, and yet somehow inevitable. "She would have been 19 when she disappeared," Theron continued. "The right age to have a daughter your age now. If she fled her arranged marriage, found a new identity, started a new life, then I would be the daughter of a princess." Marin laughed, the sound brittle and strange. "That is absurd. My family is poor. My father is a clerk. My brother accrues debts faster than he can count them. We are not exactly royal material." "Perhaps not. But poverty can be chosen as easily as it can be imposed. If your mother wanted to disappear completely, marrying a humble clerk and living modestly would be the perfect disguise." Marin's mind raced. Her mother's inexplicable refinement, her perfect deportment, her insistence that Marin learn languages and art history and proper manners despite their circumstances. Details that had always seemed eccentric now took on new meaning. If this is true, why does it matter now? 30 years have passed. When Princess Eleonora disappeared, she took documents with her. Proof of claims that could reshape power across Europe. Claims some families would kill to possess. And you think these documents are connected to your father's death? I think someone believes my father discovered where Eleonora hid them. And I think they may come for you next, if they realize who you really are. The enormity crashed over Marin. Not just secrets, but danger. Real, mortal danger. What do we do? We find the truth before they do. Theron stepped closer. We discover what your mother has been hiding. And if we cannot, if they find us first. His hand rose, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Then I will protect you, whatever the cost. Why do you care what happens to me? Because you are the first person who has looked at me and seen something other than a title. Because you speak truth when lies would be easier. The library door burst open. Your Grace, urgent message from the Dowager. She has found Mrs. Calloway, and she is not alone. Armed men arrived at the Calloway residence moments after her grace. They were asking about you, about a locket. Marin's hand flew to the sapphire at her throat. "Prepare the house for siege," Theron commanded. "No one enters or leaves without my authorization." He turned to Marin. "Whatever happens, stay close to me." "I promise," she whispered. The Dowager's carriage arrived at noon. Lady Octavia emerged first, disheveled and pale. Behind her came Helena Calloway. Helena's eyes, when they found Marin's face, held only deep, exhausted sorrow. Marin flew down the staircase into her mother's arms. "I'm so sorry, my darling." Helena's voice cracked. "I never meant for any of this to touch you." "Mother, what is happening? Who were those men?" Helena pulled back. "Everything. I have been hiding everything." They convened in Theron's study. Helena sat looking like a woman about to confess sins she had carried for 3 decades. "My name was not always Helena Calloway. I was born Eleonora Maria Sophia, 3rd daughter of King Matthias of Valdoria, Princess of the Blood." Marin's legs gave out. She sank onto the nearest chair. "You will forgive my skepticism," Lady Octavia said, "but claims of royal blood require proof." Helena handed her a yellowed letter. Lady Octavia's face went white. "This bears the royal seal of Valdoria, the personal cipher of King Matthias himself. It is my father's final letter. He knew I was fleeing my arranged marriage. He asked that I take the documents and keep them hidden." "What documents?" Theron demanded. "Proof of a conspiracy. Evidence that certain families have been manipulating royal bloodlines for generations. Evidence including proof of illegitimacy that could unseat 3 sitting monarchs." "You possess documents capable of toppling kingdoms," Cressida breathed. "I possessed them. I hid them years ago." "But someone believes you still have them," Theron said. "Someone believes they can extract them from you, or from your daughter." Helena stood. "I should never have come. I should have disappeared again." "It is too late for disappearing." Lady Octavia's voice was surprisingly gentle. "The question now is how to survive." "I want to help," Marin said. Everyone turned to her. "The house party. I was brought here to identify the traitor. That mission has not changed. Marin, the danger will exist whether I participate or hide. I am the daughter of a princess who chose courage over comfort. I will not dishonor that legacy by cowering." "She has your spine," Lady Octavia murmured to Helena. "Very well." Theron straightened. "Miss Calloway will attend the house party as planned. Mrs. Calloway will remain in a secured wing, unknown to the other guests." The house party began the following afternoon. Marin watched from her window as society's finest descended upon the Blackwood estate, dressed in their best and worst intentions. She recognized some faces from the gallery, from the ball season she had witnessed only as a servant hovering at the edges of rooms. Lady Sabine Langford arrived in a carriage that probably cost more than Marin's family home, her smile sharp as she scanned the gathered crowd for victims. Behind her came various lords and ladies, whose names Cressida had drilled into her memory, each representing potential suspects in the conspiracy that had claimed Theron's father. "Remember," Cressida murmured beside her, "we are looking for anyone who shows particular interest in you, anyone who asks about your background more thoroughly than curiosity warrants, anyone who seems to know more than they should." "So essentially, everyone." "Essentially, yes." Cressida squeezed her arm. "But we have advantages they do not. We know we are being hunted. They do not know we are hunting back." The evening's welcome dinner was a masterwork of controlled chaos. 60 guests arranged around the expanded dining table, each placement strategic, and each conversation a potential minefield. Marin found herself seated between an elderly viscount, who spent the soup course discussing his gout, and Lady Venetia Harcourt, whose probing questions felt significantly more deliberate. "I confess myself curious about you, Miss Calloway." Lady Venetia leaned closer, her perfume cloying. "You appear rather suddenly in the Duke's orbit. No one seems to know your family. Your background remains deliciously mysterious." "I am afraid there is little mystery, Lady Venetia. My family is simply modest. We do not move in circles that would invite recognition. And yet, here you are, moving in the highest circles imaginable. Some might find that suspicious. Some might find it merely fortunate." Marin kept her voice light. "Lady Cressida has been kind enough to extend friendship, and her family has graciously hosted me. Beyond that, there is nothing to explain." Lady Venetia's eyes narrowed slightly. "Nothing at all? No hidden connections? No secret claims to position or influence?" The question landed too precisely, too pointedly. Marin filed it away. "Nothing whatsoever, my lady. I am exactly what I appear to be, an unremarkable young woman grateful for unexpected opportunity. How refreshing." Lady Venetia's smile did not reach her eyes. "Honesty is so rare in society. I do hope it serves you well." Across the table, Marin caught Theron's gaze. He had observed the exchange, his expression revealing nothing but his attention fixed and focused. The game had begun. Over the following 3 days, the house party unfolded in a kaleidoscope of activities designed to display wealth and facilitate connection. Morning rides across the sprawling grounds, afternoon picnics by the ornamental lake, evening entertainments ranging from amateur theatricals to card games where fortunes changed hands with casual indifference. And through it all, Marin watched. She watched Lady Venetia conducting hushed conversations with a nervous-looking gentleman named Lord Pemberton. Their heads bent together in corners they thought unobserved. She watched Lady Sabine circling Theron with predatory persistence, her attempts at flirtation met with cold politeness that did nothing to discourage her. She watched a banker named Cornelius Trent studying the estate's layout with suspicious attention, sketching notes in a small book he kept hidden in his coat. But most tellingly, she watched the reactions when she entered rooms. Some guests dismissed her entirely, their gazes sliding past her as though she were furniture. These she eliminated from suspicion. A person hunting Princess Eleanora's daughter would not ignore the potential prize so completely. Others watched her with curiosity, the normal interest of society gossips tracking new blood. These warranted observation but not alarm. But 3 individuals watched her differently. Lady Venetia with her pointed questions, Lord Pemberton with his nervous glances, and a woman she had not initially noticed, a quiet companion to Lady Sabine named Mrs. Aldrich, whose eyes followed Marin with an intensity that felt almost predatory. "I have 3 primary suspects," she reported to Theron on the 3rd night, meeting secretly in the library after the other guests had retired. "Lady Venetia, Lord Pemberton, and Mrs. Aldrich. Explain your reasoning." Lady Venetia asked directly about hidden connections and secret claims. The language was too specific to be coincidence. "Lord Pemberton meets privately with her regularly and startles every time I enter a room, as though expecting confrontation. And Mrs. Aldrich," Marin paused, ordering her thoughts. "Mrs. Aldrich watches me the way a hunter watches prey. She makes no effort to speak with me, asks no questions, but her attention never wavers. She is either deeply suspicious of me or knows exactly who I am." Theron absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. "Mrs. Aldrich was my father's personal secretary before his death. She was dismissed shortly after, officially for economic reasons, but my father had mentioned concerns about her loyalty in the weeks before he fell ill." "You think she is the leak?" I think she bears close examination. Tomorrow evening is the masquerade ball, the final event of the house party. If our traitor intends to act, it will be then, when identities are obscured and chaos provides cover. Then we must be ready. We will be. Theron moved closer, and Maren became suddenly aware of how alone they were, how close the shadows pressed around them. But Maren, I need you to promise me something. Her name on his lips sent warmth spreading through her chest. What promise? If things go wrong tomorrow night, if danger closes in beyond our ability to manage, you will run. You will not fight, not sacrifice yourself for some misguided notion of courage. You will run, and you will survive. Theron, I have lost too much already. His voice cracked, vulnerability breaking through his careful control. My father, my peace of mind, my belief that the world makes any kind of sense. I will not lose you as well. You do not even know me? Not really. We have known each other barely a week. I know enough. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness. I know you are brave when you have every reason to be frightened. I know you see truth when others see only what they wish to see. I know you stood in that gallery surrounded by people who despised you and refused to break. That was not bravery, that was stubbornness. Sometimes they are the same thing. His thumb traced her cheekbone, leaving fire in its wake. Maren, I am not asking you to love me. I am not asking you to stay beyond your agreement. I am only asking you to survive. Can you do that? For me? She should step back, should remind him of propriety, of station, of the 1,000 reasons a duke could not care for a nobody who might or might not be a princess's daughter. Instead, she leaned into his touch. I will try, she whispered. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle, not the careful first kiss of courtship novels. It was desperate, hungry, flavored with fear and longing, and emotions neither of them could name. His hands cradled her face as though she were something precious. Her fingers gripped his lapels as though he were an anchor in a storm. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. Tomorrow, he said hoarsely. Tomorrow, we end this. And then, if we survive, we will discuss what comes next. And if we don't survive, then at least I will die knowing what your lips taste like. His smile was crooked, almost boyish. A worthy death, I think. Despite everything, she laughed. You are ridiculous. So I've been told. He stepped back, regaining some composure. Now go, before someone discovers us and adds scandal to our list of problems. She went, climbing the stairs to her borrowed chambers on legs that trembled. Behind her, she felt his gaze following until she disappeared from sight. Tomorrow, everything would change. The masquerade ball transformed the Blackwood estate into a fever dream of silk and shadow. Candles flickered in crystal chandeliers, casting fractured light across a sea of masks and mystery. Guests circled the ballroom in elaborate costumes, identities obscured by velvet and feathers and glittering deception. Maren wore a gown of midnight blue that Cressida had selected with strategic care, the color deep enough to fade into shadows when necessary. Her mask was simple, silver with sapphire accents that echoed the locket hidden beneath her bodice. The locket she had refused to remove, despite Lady Octavia's warnings. It was part of her now, proof of who she was, who her mother had been, who her family had always been beneath the poverty and the pretense. She would not hide it away like a shameful secret. She would wear it like armor. You look like a queen, Cressida murmured beside her, resplendent in rose gold. Appropriate, given the circumstances. I am not a queen, not even close. Perhaps not yet. But blood will tell, as they say. Cressida squeezed her arm. Remember the plan. Stay visible but mobile. If any of our suspects approach you, engage carefully. Draw them out if possible, but do not take risks. And if Mrs. Aldridge makes her move, then the signals we established will bring help within moments. You are not alone in this, Marin. Remember that. The evening began with waltzes, elaborate swirls of color and movement that Marin navigated with careful attention. She danced with lords whose names she forgot immediately, exchanged pleasantries with ladies who looked through her mask with knowing eyes, and accepted champagne she did not drink. Through it all, she watched. Lady Venetia circulated with purpose, stopping to whisper with various guests before moving on. Lord Pemberton hovered near the terrace doors, his nervousness now bordering on panic. And Mrs. Aldridge remained stationary by the refreshment table, her pale eyes tracking Marin's every movement. When the clock struck 10, Lady Sabine claimed Theron for a dance he could not politely refuse. Marin watched them move across the floor, Sabine's possessive grip on his arm, his face carved from ice. It was then that Mrs. Aldridge made her approach. "Miss Calloway." The woman's voice was pleasant, unremarkable. "I confess, I have wanted to speak with you all evening. Might we step onto the terrace for some air?" Every instinct screamed warning, but this was the confrontation Marin had been waiting for, the chance to draw out the truth. "Of course, Mrs. Aldridge. Some air would be welcome." The terrace was cool and shadowed, the sounds of the ball muffled by glass doors. Mrs. Aldridge led her toward a corner where torchlight flickered against stone walls. "You wear an interesting piece of jewelry," Mrs. Aldridge observed, her gaze dropping to the locket visible against Marin's neckline. A sapphire surrounded by gold filigree, quite distinctive. "It belonged to my mother." "Yes, I imagine it did." Mrs. Aldridge's smile was cold. "Tell me, Miss Calloway, do you know the story of Princess Eleonora?" The directness of the question stole Marin's breath. "I have heard rumors. A vanished royal, a disappeared bride. A woman who stole secrets that belonged to powerful people. Secrets that those people want returned." Mrs. Aldridge stepped closer, and Marin saw the knife glinting in her hand. "Your mother hid for 30 years, an impressive feat. But hiding only works when no one is looking. And now, Miss Calloway, everyone is looking. You will not get away with this." Marin's voice came out steadier than she felt. "The Duke knows what you are. He has been watching you all evening. The Duke is occupied with Lady Sabine, who has instructions to keep him occupied. By the time he realizes you are missing, you will be in a carriage bound for people who are very eager to meet Princess Eleonora's daughter. I will not tell you where the documents are hidden. I do not know. We are aware. But your mother knows, and she will tell us everything once she realizes we have you." Mrs. Aldridge raised the knife. "Now, come quietly, or I will ensure you come not at all." Marin screamed. The sound shattered the evening air, cutting through music and conversation like a blade through silk. Marin screamed and ran, not toward the ballroom where the crowd would slow her, but toward the gardens, toward darkness, toward any escape she could find. Behind her, Mrs. Aldridge cursed and followed. Marin ran through hedgerows and past fountains, her impractical shoes catching on gravel, her breath tearing through her lungs. She heard pursuit, heard voices joining Mrs. Aldridge, and heard the hunt closing in around her. A hand closed on her arm, yanking her behind a massive oak tree. She opened her mouth to scream again. "Quiet!" Theron's voice. Theron's arms wrapping around her, pulling her into shadow. "I have you. You are safe." "How did you—" "I was watching. Always watching." His grip tightened. "When you went to the terrace, I followed. When I saw the knife," his voice broke. "Marin, I thought I would lose you. Mrs. Aldridge. She has accomplices. They are being detained as we speak. My men were positioned throughout the grounds. Distant shouts confirmed his words. It is over. We have them. Relief crashed through her, so intense it buckled her knees. Theron caught her, held her, his face pressed against her hair. It is over, he repeated, a prayer and a promise. You are safe. Your mother is safe. Everything is going to be all right. And standing in the darkness, wrapped in the arms of a duke who had crossed battlefields to protect her, Marin finally allowed herself to believe him. But even as her heart steadied and her breathing slowed, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was not an ending. This was only the beginning. Dawn broke gray and unforgiving over the Blackwood estate, painting the stone walls in shades of ash and regret. Marin had not slept. She sat in the window seat of her chambers, still wearing the midnight blue gown from the masquerade, watching the sun crawl reluctantly above the horizon. Somewhere below, Mrs. Aldridge and her accomplices were being held in the estate's converted wine cellar, awaiting transport to London and whatever justice awaited traitors and conspirators. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the moment before a storm breaks, when the air goes still and heavy and wrong. A knock at her door. Soft, familiar. Enter. Theron stepped inside, and Marin's heart clenched at the sight of him. He had not changed from the masquerade either. His mask was gone, his hair disheveled, dark circles bruising the skin beneath his eyes. But he was whole. He was here. He was alive. You should be resting, he said quietly, crossing to stand beside her window seat. So should you. I could not sleep knowing you were awake. He settled onto the cushions beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. How are you? Terrified, relieved, confused. She laughed, the sound brittle. I cannot decide which emotion deserves precedence. Then do not decide. Feel them all. You have earned that right. They sat in silence, watching the sun climb higher, painting the gardens gold. Mrs. Aldridge talked, Theron said finally. Under pressure of what she faces, she revealed a great deal about the conspiracy. What did she say? That she was merely a servant of larger interests, that the people hunting your mother's documents are connected to some of the most powerful families in Europe, that my father's death wasn't accidental, but orchestrated to prevent him from revealing what he had discovered. Marin's breath caught. Your father knew about my mother, about the documents. He had been investigating for years, apparently, following threads, gathering evidence, building a case. Mrs. Aldridge was placed in our household specifically to monitor his progress and report to her masters. Theron's voice hardened. When he got too close to the truth, they eliminated him. I'm so sorry. Do not be sorry. Be vigilant. He turned to face her, his expression grave. Mrs. Aldridge also revealed that she wasn't the only agent in play. There are others, embedded throughout society, watching for any sign of Eleonora or her descendants. The attack last night was not the end of the threat. It was merely the beginning of their awareness that you exist. Cold certainty settled in Marin's stomach. They will come for me again. They will try, but I will not let them succeed. His hand found hers, gripping tightly. I have already sent messages to contacts in Parliament, in the military, in intelligence circles. By the end of the week, you and your mother will be under the protection of the Crown itself. The Crown? Theron, I am not even certain I believe my own heritage. How can you expect? Your grandmother has confirmed everything. Marin stared at him. My what? Your grandmother, Helena's mother, Queen Margarethe of Valdoria. Theron's thumb traced circles on her palm, the gesture grounding her against the impossibility of his words. She is still alive, Marin, 87 years old, confined to the palace, but very much alive. When my grandmother's message reached her yesterday, she sent an immediate response. She has been searching for her daughter for 30 years. She never stopped believing Eleonora was alive. The world tilted sideways. A grandmother, a queen, alive and searching for her lost daughter all this time. I cannot. Marin pulled her hand free, standing abruptly. This is too much. Yesterday I was a serving girl. Today you tell me I have a grandmother who is a queen, that royalty has been hunting me, that your father died because of secrets my mother carried. Marin. No. She wrapped her arms around herself, retreating toward the fireplace. I agreed to observe a house party, to help you find a traitor. I did not agree to become a pawn in some grand European conspiracy. I did not agree to discover that my entire life has been a lie. Your life wasn't a lie. Your mother loved you, protected you, built a world where you could be safe. Theron rose but did not approach, respecting her need for distance. Everything she did for you. That is not deception. That is devotion. Devotion that brought assassins to her door. Devotion that painted a target on my back. Marin's voice cracked. What happens now? Theron? Do I spend the rest of my life running? Hiding? Watching over my shoulder for the next Mrs. Aldridge? No. His voice was firm, absolute. What happens now is that we fight back. We find the documents your mother hid. We expose the conspiracy to the light of day. We make it impossible for them to operate in shadows any longer. And you believe that will work? Against people who have murdered and manipulated for 30 years? I believe we have something they did not anticipate. Something that changes everything. What? His eyes met hers, burning with intensity. You. They expected a frightened girl they could capture and use as leverage. Instead, they found someone who exposed frauds in public galleries, who negotiated with dukes, who ran through gardens with assassins on her heels and survived. They underestimated you, Marin. That is their fatal error. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that courage and conviction could triumph over power and centuries of conspiracy. But she had seen too much of the world's cruelty to embrace optimism easily. Where is my mother? She asked. Still in the secured wing, still safe. She wishes to speak with you when you are ready. I am not certain I will ever be ready. Then speak with her anyway. Some conversations cannot wait for readiness. Marin found her mother in a small sitting room in the estate's east wing, seated by a window much like the one Marin had just abandoned. Helena wore simple gray, her silver-streaked dark hair loose around her shoulders, and for the first time, Marin could see traces of royalty in her bearing, in the way she held her head, in the quiet dignity of her stillness. Marin. Helena rose, her arms opening. But Marin did not step into the embrace. She remained by the door, keeping distance between them. Tell me everything, she said flatly. No more lies, no more omissions. Everything. Pain flickered across Helena's face, but she nodded. Sit. Please. This will take time. They settled into chairs across from each other, mother and daughter, princess and heir, separated by 30 years of secrets. I was 18 when they arranged my marriage to Edmund Blackwood, Helena began, her voice distant with memory. I had never met him, never seen his face except in portraits. But my father assured me it was a good match, a strategic alliance that would benefit Valdoria and strengthen ties with English nobility. You did not want to marry him. I did not want to marry anyone. I wanted to study art, to travel, to live a life that was mine, rather than a life designed by treaties and political calculations. Helena's hands twisted in her lap. But princesses do not have such luxuries. Princesses serve. Princesses sacrifice. Princesses smile and obey, and never question. So you ran. I ran. 1 week before the wedding, I packed a single bag, took the documents my father had entrusted to me, and disappeared into the night. Helena's eyes met Marin's. I know how it sounds. Cowardly. Selfish. A princess abandoning her duty because she was afraid of an arranged marriage. Is that what it was? Partly. But there was more. Helena stood, moving to the window, her back to her daughter. The documents I took were not random. They were evidence my father had gathered over decades, proof of a conspiracy that reached into every royal house in Europe. Proof that certain families had been manipulating bloodlines, arranging marriages and deaths, engineering successions to consolidate power. The conspiracy Theron mentioned. The same. My father discovered it when investigating irregularities in his own ancestry. He found documents suggesting that 3 generations of Valdorian succession had been influenced, manipulated, controlled by outside forces. Helena turned. He was preparing to expose them. But he knew the moment he went public, they would kill him. Kill me. Kill anyone who could corroborate his claims. So he gave you the documents. He gave me the only copies, and he told me to run, to hide, to keep them safe until the time was right. He said he would create a distraction, would draw their attention while I disappeared. He said, Helena's voice broke. He said he would rather lose his daughter to freedom than watch her die in chains. Marin's throat tightened. She had spent her whole life believing her grandfather was some distant, unknown figure. Now she learned he had sacrificed everything to protect her mother. What happened to him? He died 3 years after I fled. Officially, it was a hunting accident. Unofficially, Helena shook her head. I think they realized he had given the documents to someone. I think they tried to extract the location from him. I think he died protecting my secret. The weight of it settled on Marin's shoulders. Generations of sacrifice and secrets, lives lost, and lives lived in shadow. Why did you never tell me? She whispered. Who killed Theron's father? Who sent assassins to our door? They will come for us with everything they have. There will be no more hiding, no more shadows, only battle, until one side or the other is destroyed. And if we do not retrieve the documents, if we stay hidden, then the conspiracy continues. More innocents die, more families suffer, and eventually, inevitably, they find us anyway. Helena's eyes glistened. There is no path without danger, my darling. There is only the choice of which danger we face. Marin stared at her mother, at this woman she thought she knew, but was only now beginning to understand. A princess who had abandoned everything for freedom. A mother who had built a life from nothing to protect her child. A keeper of secrets that could reshape nations. If we do this, Marin said slowly, if we expose the conspiracy and face whatever comes, I want something in return. Anything. I want you to contact my grandmother, your mother, the Queen. The words felt strange on her tongue. She deserves to know her daughter is alive. She deserves to meet her granddaughter. Helena's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks, 30 years of grief and longing finally finding release. I thought she would hate me, she whispered. I abandoned her, left without explanation. Let her believe I might be dead. She has been searching for you for 30 years. She never stopped. Marin pulled her mother into an embrace, holding her as she wept. Whatever happens next, we face it together, as a family. The family we should have been all along. They held each other in the gray morning light. Mother and daughter, princess and heir, bound by blood and ready for war. But even as reconciliation bloomed between them, danger was gathering beyond the estate's walls. That afternoon, a messenger arrived from London with news that turned hope to ash. Lord Pemberton had escaped custody during transport. Lady Venetia had vanished from her townhouse, leaving behind only empty drawers and burned correspondence. And in Parliament, questions were being raised about the Duke of Thornfield's unauthorized detention of citizens, about rumors of conspiracy that sounded increasingly like the ravings of a grief-maddened heir. "They are moving against us," Theron said grimly, staring at the dispatch. "Discrediting our claims before we can make them public." "How is that possible?" Cressida demanded. "Mrs. Aldridge confessed. We have evidence." "Evidence can be suppressed. Confessions can be recanted or attributed to coercion. They have had 30 years to build networks of influence. We have had 3 days." Marin watched Theron's face harden, watched the weight of responsibility settle onto shoulders already burdened with grief and duty. "What do we do?" she asked. "We accelerate our timeline." He turned to Lady Octavia, who had been listening in silence. "Grandmother, your connections at court. Can you arrange an audience with the Queen?" "The Queen of England?" Lady Octavia's eyebrow rose. "That would require circumstances of extreme urgency." "We have those circumstances. A foreign princess on English soil, carrying evidence of continental conspiracy. Surely that merits royal attention. It would also draw precisely the attention we are trying to avoid. Then we draw it deliberately, on our terms." Theron's mind was clearly racing, strategy forming behind his eyes. "If we cannot fight in shadows, we fight in light. We make our claims so publicly, so loudly, that suppressing them becomes impossible. That is extraordinarily risky. So is waiting for our enemies to consolidate their position." Theron looked to Marin. "Your mother said you must decide what happens next. This is that decision. Do we retrieve the documents? Do we go public? Do we risk everything on the chance of victory?" Marin thought of her father, slowly fading in his sick bed, of Corvin, drowning in debts he could never escape, of her mother, who had spent 30 years running and hiding and sacrificing. She thought of Theron, grieving a father who had died seeking truth. She thought of a grandmother she had never met, searching for a daughter who had vanished like morning mist. "We retrieve the documents," she said. "We go public. We end this, whatever the cost." Theron's expression shifted, something fierce and proud kindling in his eyes. "Then we leave for London tonight. All of us. Together. The conspiracy will anticipate that move. Let them." Theron's smile was razor-edged. "Let them see us coming. Let them understand that they have underestimated the wrong family." He extended his hand to Marin, the gesture both an invitation and a vow. She took it without hesitation. But as they began preparations for departure, as servants rushed to pack trunks and ready carriages, Marin could not shake the feeling that they were racing toward something far larger than any of them fully understood. And somewhere in the gathering shadows, their enemies were watching, waiting, preparing to strike. London swallowed them whole. The city rose around their carriage like a beast of stone and smoke, its streets choked with humanity, its air thick with the smell of coal and river water, and 10,000 lives pressed too closely together. After the manicured grounds of the Blackwood estate, the chaos felt almost violent. Marin pressed close to the carriage window, watching the city she had lived in her entire life, as though seeing it for the first time. Had it always been this loud, this overwhelming? Or had she simply grown accustomed to its weight, the way one grows accustomed to chains? "We will proceed to Blackwood House first," Theron said, reviewing documents in the dim interior. It is secure and defensible. From there, we will coordinate our approach." "And the documents?" Helena asked. She sat opposite Marin, her face pale but determined. "The sooner we retrieve them, the sooner we have leverage." "Where did you hide them?" Helena hesitated, glancing at the others in the carriage. Lady Octavia, Cressida, 2 armed guards Theron had insisted upon. "You may speak freely," Theron said. "Everyone present has proven their loyalty." "Very well." Helena took a breath. "When I first arrived in England, I was alone, frightened, with nothing but the clothes on my back and the documents in my bag. I knew I needed to hide them somewhere no one would think to look. Somewhere that would survive decades without discovery. And you chose? St. Sepulchre's." Helena's voice was steady. "The church near Newgate. There is a crypt beneath the altar, accessible only through a passage known to a handful of clergy. 30 years ago, I made a significant donation to the church and secured permanent access to a private vault." "You hid continental secrets in an English church," Lady Octavia said flatly. "I hid them in a place no conspiracy would think to investigate. Royal documents in a commoner's tomb, surrounded by centuries of anonymous dead." Helena's smile was thin. It seemed poetic at the time. The carriage jolted over cobblestones, and Marin gripped the seat to steady herself. "How do we access the vault without drawing attention?" she asked, carefully. "The current rector is elderly and discreet. He knows nothing of the document's contents, only that a generous benefactor pays yearly for private access to a family tomb." Helena paused. "But we cannot simply walk through the front doors. If we are being watched, and we must assume we are, any unusual activity will be noted." "Then we create a distraction," Cressida suggested. "Something that draws attention elsewhere, while a small party retrieves the documents." "What kind of distraction?" Cressida's eyes gleamed with mischief that seemed inappropriate to the circumstances, but somehow comforting. "Leave that to me. I have been waiting my entire life to cause a scandal for a good reason." Blackwood House rose from the London streets like a fortress disguised as a mansion. 4 stories of gray stone, iron-gated courtyards, and enough servants to staff a small army. Marin had never seen its like, except from the outside, passing on streets she had no business walking. Now she walked through its doors as a guest, as something more than a guest, as the woman the Duke of Thornfield had kissed in moonlit gardens and promised to protect with his life. The reality of that still had not fully settled. In the chaos of revelations and escapes and conspiracies, she had not had time to examine what was growing between them. The stolen glances, the electric touches, the way his voice softened when he spoke her name. It was impossible, of course. A duke and a servant's daughter, regardless of whatever royal blood flowed in her veins. Society would never accept it. His family would never approve it. The future stretched before them full of obstacles that seemed insurmountable. And yet, when he looked at her, she forgot to care about obstacles. "Your chambers are prepared in the East Wing," Theron said, as servants swarmed to take coats and direct luggage. "Rest if you can. We move at nightfall. And you? I have messages to send, allies to rally." His hand brushed hers, a touch so brief it might have been accidental. "We will have time to talk. After. Such a small word to contain so much uncertainty. Marin allowed herself to be escorted to chambers that rivaled those at the estate, sinking onto a bed that cost more than her family's annual income, and staring at a ceiling painted with scenes from mythology. Somewhere in this city, her father lay in a sickbed. Her mother hid secrets that could reshape Europe. Conspirators plotted her capture or death. And all she could think about was the way Theron's eyes had looked in the library, burning with something that went beyond duty or obligation. "Focus," she commanded herself. Survive first, feel later. But feeling, it seemed, refused to wait. Night fell over London like a shroud, and with it came the plan. Cressida's distraction took the form of a spontaneous gathering at a popular assembly hall, announced through rapidly circulated invitations and word of mouth. The Duke of Thornfield's younger sister, hosting an impromptu entertainment for no apparent reason, drew exactly the kind of curious attention they required. "Anyone watching us will assume we're all at the assembly," Cressida explained, adjusting her spectacular gown. "By the time they realize only I appeared, you'll be long gone." "You should not be alone," Theron protested. "I will not be alone. I will be surrounded by 200 of society's most tedious gossips, which is far better protection than any guard." She kissed her brother's cheek. "Stop worrying. Go save the world. Tell me about it tomorrow." She swept out before he could argue further, leaving behind the scent of rosewater and reckless confidence. The retrieval party was small. Theron, Marin, Helena, and 2 of Theron's most trusted men. They traveled in an unmarked carriage, dressed in modest clothing that would not draw attention in the streets near St. Sepulchre's. The church loomed against the night sky, its ancient stones drinking moonlight. Even at this hour, candles flickered behind stained glass, and the distant sound of evensong drifted from within. "The rector will have retired by now," Helena murmured. "But he always leaves the side chapel unlocked for late-night supplicants. We can access the crypt from there." They moved through shadows like ghosts, slipping through the side entrance into a small chapel, thick with the smell of incense and old stone. Helena led them past rows of wooden pews, past flickering votive candles, to a door half hidden behind a tapestry depicting the Last Judgment. Beyond the door, stairs descended into darkness. "Stay close," Helena whispered. "The passage is narrow, and there are remains." The crypt opened around them, a cathedral of the dead carved from London's bedrock. Niches lined the walls, each containing the wrapped and withered remnants of someone who had once lived, loved, hoped. The air was cold and still, carrying the weight of centuries. Marin shuddered but pressed forward. Helena counted niches as she walked, her lips moving silently. At the 23rd, she stopped, kneeling to examine the stone beneath. "Here." Her fingers found a groove invisible to casual inspection. "Help me." Theron and his men joined her, prying at the stone, until it shifted, revealing a hollow beneath. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth that had somehow survived 3 decades of damp, lay a leather satchel. Helena lifted it with trembling hands, opening the flap to reveal documents, yellow with age, but intact. Papers covered in precise handwriting, official seals, signatures that would have meant nothing to Marin months ago, but now represented power beyond imagining. "This is it," Helena breathed. "Everything my father gathered, everything they have been searching for." "Then let us leave before they find us searching for it," Theron said grimly. They turned back toward the stairs and found their path blocked by Lord Pemberton, flanked by 6 armed men, their faces hard and merciless in the torchlight. "I thought you might come here eventually," Pemberton said, his nervous manner replaced by cold calculation. "Lady Venetia believed you would attempt a public accusation. I suspected you would need evidence first." His smile was thin as a blade. "It seems I was correct." "You escaped custody," Theron said, his hand moving toward the weapon at his hip. "I was released. There is a difference." Pemberton stepped closer, his men spreading to block any retreat. "The people I serve have resources beyond your imagining, Thornfield. Judges, constables, members of Parliament. We have spent 30 years weaving ourselves into the fabric of power. You cannot fight us by arresting a single secretary or capturing a handful of hired thugs. Then what do you propose?" "An exchange," The documents for your lives. Pemberton's eyes moved to Marin. Specifically, her life. We still have use for Princess Eleonora's daughter. The rest of you are merely obstacles. I will not let you take her. You may not have a choice. Pemberton raised his hand, and his men drew weapons, blades glinting in the torchlight. Surrender the documents. Surrender the girl. Walk away with your lives. It is more mercy than you deserve. Silence stretched through the crypt, broken only by the distant drip of water and the ragged breathing of the confrontation. Then Marin stepped forward. Wait. Every eye turned to her. Pemberton's smugness faltered slightly. Theron made a sound of protest. The documents you want, she said, keeping her voice steady with effort. You do not actually know what they contain, do you? You only know they are dangerous. We know enough. You know what you have been told. But my grandfather was clever. Cleverer than the people who killed him. She reached into the satchel her mother still clutched, withdrawing a single page. This document, for instance. Do you know what it proves? Pemberton's eyes narrowed. I know it should be in our hands, not yours. It proves that Lord Carston, one of the founding members of your precious conspiracy, was himself illegitimate. His bloodline is false. His claims to power are based on lies. Marin smiled at the confusion flickering across Pemberton's face. Did they not tell you that? Did they not explain that the very foundation of their authority rests on deception? You are lying, attempting to confuse the situation. Am I? Or am I revealing truths your masters have kept from their own servants? She took another step forward. You are a tool, Lord Pemberton. Useful, but disposable. The moment we are dealt with, how long before they decide you know too much? Before you become another loose end requiring elimination? Enough. Pemberton's composure cracked. Seize them. Now. His men surged forward. Theron's guards drew weapons. Steel clashed against steel in the narrow confines of the crypt, the sound echoing off ancient stone. In the chaos, Marin grabbed her mother's arm and ran. They plunged deeper into the crypt, away from the battle, through passages that grew narrower and darker with each step. Behind them, shouts echoed. Boots pounded. Pursuit gathered. There, Helena gasped, pointing toward a grate set into the floor. It leads to the old Roman tunnels. They connect to the river. We will be trapped. We will be alive. Helena was already prying at the grate. Help me. Together they lifted the ancient metal, revealing a shaft descending into absolute darkness. Marin did not let herself think. She lowered herself into the void, felt her feet find rusted rungs, and began to climb down. Her mother followed, pulling the grate closed above them. They descended into darkness, into uncertainty, into the ancient bones of London itself. And somewhere above them, they heard Pemberton's frustrated howl of rage. The tunnels were labyrinthine, a maze of Roman stonework and medieval additions and Victorian modifications that seemed designed to confuse and trap. Marin and Helena stumbled through them blind, one hand on the wall, the other gripping the precious satchel. How do you know these passages? Marin whispered. I have spent 30 years preparing for this moment. Learning escape routes, memorizing paths. Helena's voice was steady despite their circumstances. I knew they would find me eventually. I wanted to be ready. They emerged through a drainage gate into the stinking waters of the Thames at low tide. Marin gagged at the smell, but forced herself forward, wading through muck that sucked at her boots until they reached a stone embankment where they could climb free. London stretched around them, indifferent to their flight, its streets still busy with late-night commerce and shadowed dealings. We need to return to Blackwood House, Marin said. Theron will find us. Helena gripped her arm. But first, we must ensure the documents are safe. If we are captured with them, everything we have sacrificed is for nothing. Then where do we go? Helena's eyes scanned the riverside, calculating. There is one place they will not think to look. One person who owes me a debt that has never been repaid. Who? Your father? Marin stared. Father? He knows nothing about any of this. He knows more than he has ever told you. Helena's expression was unreadable. When I married William Calloway, I was not simply hiding. I was being protected. Your father was once part of a network that helped people like me disappear. Another revelation. Another piece of the puzzle shifting into place. He knows who you really are. He has always known, and he has protected that secret with his life. Helena took her daughter's hand. Come, we have much to discuss with your father, and very little time to discuss it. They moved through London's streets like shadows, two women carrying secrets that could reshape nations, hunted by forces that would stop at nothing to silence them. But for the first time since the masquerade, Marin felt something other than fear. She felt purpose. She felt ready. The confrontation was coming. One way or another, this would end. And when it did, she intended to be standing. Home had never looked so small. Marin stood before the modest townhouse where she had spent her entire life, seeing it through new eyes. The chipped paint on the door, the worn steps, the windows that never quite kept out the cold. And somewhere inside, her father, who had apparently known the truth about her mother for 30 years and never spoken a word. Helena knocked softly, a pattern Marin did not recognize. Seconds passed. Then the door opened, and William Calloway stood before them, his gaunt face sharp with recognition and relief. Eleonora, he said the name like a prayer. You found her. She found me. Helena stepped inside, pulling Marin with her. Is it safe? Safe enough. Corvin is out, and the watchers I spotted earlier have moved to the corner. William's eyes, so like Marin's own, moved to his daughter. I suppose you have questions. I have an entire lifetime of questions. Marin heard the anger in her own voice, could not suppress it. You knew. All these years, you knew who Mother was. Who I was. I knew. And I kept the secret because keeping it was the only way to keep you alive. William closed the door, bolting it carefully. I met your mother 28 years ago, when I was part of a network that helped political refugees disappear. She was running from forces I could not imagine, carrying documents she refused to explain. I did not need explanations. I could see she was terrified and alone and needed help. So you married her? I fell in love with her. The simple words carried 30 years of devotion. I was supposed to help her establish a new identity and move on. Instead, I found myself unable to imagine life without her. When I proposed, she told me everything. The princess, the conspiracy, the documents. She gave me every reason to walk away. But you did not. I could not. William's smile was soft with memory. She was extraordinary. Brave and brilliant and impossibly stubborn. How could I not love her? Marin looked between her parents, seeing them anew. Not the tired clerk and the modest housewife she had always known, but a princess who had sacrificed everything for freedom and the man who had loved her enough to share her exile. Why did you never tell me? Because innocence was your best protection. Helena answered this time. If you didn't know the truth, you could not reveal it under pressure. Your ignorance kept you safe. Until it did not. Until it did not, Helena agreed. And now we must decide what happens next. William moved to a loose floorboard Marin had walked over thousands of times without suspecting. Beneath it lay a compartment she had never known existed. He withdrew a small locked box and handed it to Helena. Everything I kept in case this day came. Correspondence from your network, records of the conspiracy's activities that I observed over the years. Names of people who might still be sympathetic to your cause. Helena opened the box, her eyes widening at its contents. William, this is extraordinary. How did you gather all this? I have been watching them watch us for 30 years. They thought me oblivious, a harmless clerk too unimportant to monitor closely. They were wrong. His jaw tightened. I could not fight them directly. I was too weak, too poor, too nobody. But I could record. I could remember. I could prepare. Maren felt tears prick her eyes. All these years, she had thought her father broken by failure. Instead, he had been waging a silent war against forces that could have destroyed him with a whisper. We need to return to Theron, she said, to tell him we are safe, that we still have the documents. We cannot go to Blackwood House directly. Helena spread William's records across the table, her tactical mind already working. They will be watching, expecting. Then we need to draw them out, force a confrontation on our terms. What are you proposing? Maren thought of everything she had learned, everything she had survived. The gallery where she had exposed a forgery, the estate where she had discovered her heritage, the crypt where she had faced assassins and lived. We go public, she said slowly. Completely, undeniably public. Not through parliament or courts, or any channel they can corrupt. We go directly to the people. Helena frowned. How? The Queen. Maren's mind raced with possibilities. Not the Queen of England, your mother. The Queen of Valdoria. She turned to her father. You said you have correspondence from Mother's network. Are there still people loyal to the Valdorian crown? People who could arrange communication with Queen Margaret? There are, but reaching them would take days, perhaps weeks. We do not have weeks, but we might not need them. Maren grabbed paper and pen from the desk. The conspiracy has survived for generations by operating in secret. Their power depends on no one knowing they exist. What if we simply told everyone? Told everyone how? Newspapers, pamphlets, public speeches. We flood London with the truth, make it impossible to suppress or deny. We name names, provide evidence, let the people themselves become the weapon. Helena stared at her daughter with something like wonder. That is incredibly dangerous. The conspiracy would retaliate immediately. They are already retaliating. We are already hunted. At least this way, we control the narrative. Maren's voice hardened with resolve. My grandfather died protecting these secrets. Theron's father died pursuing them. How many more must die before someone has the courage to drag this darkness into the light? Silence fell. William and Helena exchanged a long look, the wordless communication of partners who had faced decades of danger together. Finally, Helena nodded. We do it your way. We go public. She gathered the documents, both sets now combined. But we need allies, people who can amplify our message, protect us while we speak. I know where to find them. Maren's heart pounded with fear and determination in equal measure. But first, I need to find Theron. I need to know he survived the crypt. Then find him. Helena squeezed her hand. We will prepare everything. When you return, we launch our war. Maren slipped out into the London night, moving through shadows toward Blackwood House. Every instinct screamed that this was reckless, that walking toward the obvious destination was exactly what her enemies expected. But she had promised Theron she would survive. And surviving without knowing his fate was not survival at all. It was merely existing. Blackwood House blazed with light when she arrived, far more activity than late night warranted. Guards patrolled the perimeter. Servants rushed between doors. Something had happened. Marin circled to a servant's entrance she had mapped during their earlier arrival, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years invisible. She slipped inside, navigating corridors that bustled with tension, until she found a parlor where familiar voices echoed. Cannot simply vanish. They must be somewhere in the city. Theron's voice. Alive. Safe. Marin pushed through the door. He stood with his back to her, arguing with Lady Octavia about search patterns and contingency plans. Cressida sat nearby, still in her assembly gown, her face pale with worry. 2 guards with fresh bandages suggested the battle in the crypt had extracted a price. The tunnels could lead anywhere, Theron was saying. We need to… Theron! He spun. His face, already haggard with exhaustion and concern, transformed at the sight of her. Relief, joy, and something deeper blazed across his features before he could compose them. Marin. Her name was a breath, a prayer. Then he was crossing the room, pulling her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. You are alive, he murmured against her hair. I thought I had lost you. I thought… I am here. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. The documents are safe, my mother is safe, and we have a plan. A plan? A war. She smiled despite everything. I hope you are ready to fight. In the hours before dawn, they gathered their forces. The documents were consolidated, copied, distributed to allies throughout the city. Printers worked through the night preparing pamphlets that would blanket London by morning. Sympathetic journalists were summoned, their notebooks filling with evidence that would shock the nation. And at the center of it all stood Marin, the serving girl who had discovered she was a princess, directing a campaign against forces that had manipulated Europe for generations. Theron never left her side. Through the endless planning, the whispered conferences, the moments of doubt that threatened to paralyze her, he remained constant. A steady presence that reminded her she was not alone. Whatever happens today, he said, as dawn painted the sky pink, I want you to know something. What? I love you. The words came out simply, without artifice or hesitation. Not because of your blood, or your heritage, or anything the documents might prove. I love you because you are the bravest, most extraordinary person I have ever known. Because you stood in that gallery, surrounded by people who despised you and refused to break. Because you ran through crypts with assassins on your heels and came out fighting. Theron, let me finish. He cupped her face in his hands. When this is over, when the conspiracy is exposed and the danger has passed, I want to marry you. I want to spend the rest of my life beside you, fighting whatever battles need fighting, building whatever future we can imagine. I want you to be my wife, my partner, my everything. I am a servant's daughter. You are a princess. I was raised in poverty. I do not know how to be a duchess. You know how to be brave, how to be kind, how to see truth when others see only what they wish to see. His thumbs brushed her cheeks. Everything else can be learned. Society will never accept it. Then society will adjust, or society will be wrong. I do not care about society's acceptance, Marin. I care about yours. His eyes searched hers, vulnerable and hopeful and terrified. Do I have it? She should refuse, should point out 1,000 practical obstacles, should protect them both from the scandal that would certainly follow. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. Yes, she whispered against his lips. You have it. You have all of it. You have me. He kissed her back, deep and thorough, sealing promises that neither of them could fully imagine keeping. But they would try. Together. The public revelation began at noon in Trafalgar Square. Marin stood on a makeshift platform, surrounded by allies who had emerged from shadows throughout the morning. Journalists, politicians, clergy, military officers, all of them carrying pieces of evidence that together painted an undeniable picture. Behind her, Helena stood with Lady Octavia and Theron, a united front of nobility and exile. Cressida distributed pamphlets to the growing crowd with enthusiastic efficiency, and before her, London gathered. Workers on their midday break, merchants curious about the commotion, ladies and lords who had heard rumors and come to investigate. "People of London," Maureen began, her voice carrying across the square. "I stand before you today to reveal a conspiracy that has shaped your lives without your knowledge. For generations, powerful families across Europe have manipulated royal bloodlines, arranged marriages and deaths, engineered successions to consolidate their own power." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Disbelief, curiosity, concern. "I am the granddaughter of King Matthias of Valdoria. My mother, Princess Eleonora, fled an arranged marriage 30 years ago, carrying evidence of this conspiracy. That evidence has been hunted ever since by people who would kill to keep it hidden." She held up documents, letting them catch the sunlight. "These papers prove that Lord Carston, Baron Pemberton, and 16 other noble families across England and the continent have been part of a secret organization manipulating power for over a century. They arranged the death of the late Duke of Thornfield when he got too close to the truth. They attempted to kidnap me when I was discovered. They operate in shadows because they cannot survive in light." Voices rose, questions, demands, fear and excitement mixing into something volatile. "Today, we drag them into the light. Today, we let the people of England and Europe see the truth for themselves. Today, we end the conspiracy of shadows." The crowd erupted. Pamphlets circulated with dizzying speed. Journalists shouted questions. Somewhere in the distance, Maureen heard the sound of approaching horses, authority figures coming to investigate the disturbance. But it was too late for suppression. The truth was loose now, spreading through London like wildfire. By evening, it would be in every newspaper. By tomorrow, it would cross the Channel. By week's end, the crowned heads of Europe would have no choice but to respond. In the chaos, Maureen felt Theron's hand find hers. She turned to see him smiling, proud and fierce and full of love. "You did it," he said. "We did it. All of us. Whatever comes next, they cannot put this back in the bottle." "No." Maureen squeezed his hand. "They cannot." Whatever came next, they would face together. The weeks that followed were a hurricane of consequences: parliamentary hearings, diplomatic negotiations, arrests of conspirators who could not escape the overwhelming evidence. Lord Pemberton was captured trying to flee to France. Lady Venetia was found dead by her own hand, unable to face the exposure she had spent her life avoiding. Queen Margaret of Valdoria sent formal recognition of her daughter and granddaughter, along with an invitation to visit when circumstances permitted. Helena wept for 3 days after receiving it, and through it all, Theron remained at Maureen's side. Steady, constant, unwavering. The wedding took place in spring, when the gardens of the Blackwood estate had exploded into color. It was smaller than society expected for a duke's marriage, but larger than either of them had wanted. Compromises, they had learned, were necessary for survival. Maureen walked down the aisle in a gown of ivory silk, the sapphire locket bright against her throat. Her father, finally recovered enough to stand, gave her away with tears streaming down his face. Helena sat in the front row beside Cressida and Lady Octavia, a princess finally reclaiming her place, and at the altar waited Theron, watching her approach with an expression of such overwhelming love that Maureen nearly forgot the words she was supposed to say. I, Marin Helena Calloway, she managed, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Take thee, Sebastian Theron Blackwood. You used my full name, he murmured, interrupting. You never use my full name. It seemed appropriate for the occasion. It sounds strange. Then stop being strange and let me finish my vows. Laughter rippled through the assembled guests. Even Lady Octavia's lips twitched toward a smile. The ceremony continued. Vows were exchanged. Rings were placed. And when Theron finally kissed his bride, the cheering could be heard throughout the estate. 1 year later, a carriage pulled up before a palace that gleamed white against Valdorian skies. Marin stepped out first, steadied by Theron's hand, and stared at the building where her mother had been born, where generations of her ancestors had lived and ruled, where an elderly queen had waited 3 decades to meet the granddaughter she had dreamed of, but never dared hope existed. The journey had taken 3 weeks, across the Channel, through France, over mountain passes still dusted with spring snow. Helena had grown quieter with each passing mile, her eyes fixed on landscapes she had not seen since fleeing in the darkness of youth. Ready? Theron asked softly. No. Marin smoothed her traveling dress, checked that the sapphire locket hung straight. But I am doing it anyway. Behind them, Helena emerged from the second carriage, her face pale but resolute. Together? Marin asked, extending her hand. Helena took it without hesitation. Together. At the top of the grand staircase, supported by attendants but standing on her own power, waited Queen Margaret. She was tiny, bird-boned, her silver hair swept back from a face carved by time and stubborn hope. Her eyes, blue as the sapphires that had connected 3 generations of women across decades of separation, glistened with tears she refused to shed until her daughter stood before her. Eleonora, she whispered. Then louder, her voice carrying with surprising strength. My daughter. My child. Helena climbed the stairs alone. By the time she reached the top, tears streamed freely down both their faces. Mama, forgive me for leaving. Forgive me for everything. There is nothing to forgive. Margaret cupped her daughter's face in weathered hands. You survived. You protected your child. I only wish I could have protected you. Then Margaret looked past Helena to where Marin waited. And you, my granddaughter. The child I dreamed of, but never dared hope to meet. Marin climbed the stairs, her heart hammering. Your Majesty, she began. None of that. Margaret pulled her into an embrace. I am your grandmother, and you are my darling girl. Grandmother, Marin breathed, and the word felt like coming home at last after a lifetime of wandering. At the formal reception that evening, Margaret made the announcement. For 30 years, this kingdom mourned a lost princess. Tonight, that hope is vindicated. My daughter Eleonora has returned. My granddaughter Marin stands before you. The royal line endures. Theron led Marin onto the dance floor. Princess, he murmured as they waltzed. I married a princess and a duchess. Lady Octavia is insufferable enough for 2, Marin replied, but in a rather endearing way now. They departed Valdoria on a morning painted gold with sunrise. The carriage rocked gently as it descended the mountain pass. Helena dozed in the corner. Ahead lay England and the life they had built together. What are you thinking? Theron asked softly. About beginnings and endings, about how one shattered champagne glass changed everything. Not strange. Theron kissed her forehead. Miraculous. Every small choice, every act of courage leading to this. To what? To us. To everything we have built. His arms tightened around her. To a future I cannot wait to discover. Behind them, a kingdom joyfully celebrated its lost princess found. Before them, a future stretched full of possibility. and between them, a love that had begun with a falling champagne glass and grown into something that could reshape the world. It was not a fairy tale ending. It was better. It was real. Thank you for being here. You are the reason these stories exist, because you believe in love that chooses courage over convenience, in characters who fight for happiness despite the odds, in endings that feel earned and true. Your presence makes this space warm and welcoming, and I am grateful for every moment you spend with these characters. Do you have a favorite line or scene? Your engagement helps me understand what moves you, what keeps you listening, and what kinds of stories to create next. Consider subscribing if you would like more romance with emotional depth and genuine character growth. Thank you for being here. You make this community what it is.